You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 582, the coverage for Star Wars, the Battle of Jakku, Insurgency Rising, issue number 2. This is an episode that we had planned like 2 or 3 weeks ago to do. We're a little bit late on this one now, and for a couple different reasons, we had to keep pushing it off. But we're here. We're finally able to break down issue 2, although I will say issue 3 and 4 have now been released. I think 4 maybe hit the stands, as a matter of fact, as of this recording today. And so we already have the full context of where this story ends, but we're going to talk as though we don't. So if anybody's listening and they don't want the big spoilers, we'll kind of keep the spoilers out of it. But it's a comic book that we were very excited with the first issue, and I think the second issue does a pretty good job of that. And yeah, we'll maybe talk about where that goes afterwards. But here to join me on this evening's discussion is none other than Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Yeah, this was a series that we were interested to see kind of where this was going to go. And this issue kind of teased a lot of things. Actually, I was surprised how many tie-ins were in just a very few short scenes within this book, but tons of tie-ins, like really loaded up, which is kind of cool. Like that's where the comics kind of excel, to be able to pull some of that stuff in and tease out a little bit. And then you see if it actually pans out. And I think there were some signs in this one that, it's curious if it's going to go that direction or not. But yeah, it's cool to be able to bring these back to the forefront, though. So new comics are always great. Yeah,
and we'll get into a little bit more of the opening thoughts here in just one second. But before we do, I know you want to say thank you to some very special folks.
Yeah, thank you to all of our Patreon members, especially our now part of the Tribe members: Alex, Raphael, Danny, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Rist, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Rita Reborn. And our Delusions of Grandeur members, our top tier members. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Rob. If you're curious about Patreon, we've been doing a whole series breaking down Star Wars: A New Hope as if it were a TV series. We've got episode 6 coming out this Sunday. CantinaCast.com/Patreon. We've got audio only. We've got videos. We have chances for you to come on and do the show with us from time to time. So if you're curious, if you've been interested, we invite you to go out there and check that out. If you'd like to come out and if you're listening to this, thanks for the download. If you'd like to visit us on the live stream, Wednesdays and Sundays usually, you can come out to CantinaCast.com/YouTube and you could be like one of these amazing people, my Star Wars guys, JJ Skywalker, One Up versus CPU, and Alex just chimed in as well. So we see you folks in the background. Please do say hello, and we'll try to come back around at the end of the show and say hi to everybody else. You get your comments on screen, all that kind of good stuff too.
Yeah. I like how Alex comes in, guns blazing. What's this? Like he's like no idea what the hell the show's even about, just decided to jump in. So no, thank you. We appreciate you jumping in, even though you have no context. Hopefully you guys have listened to the first issue, the breakdown already. But I think you stole my talking points on the upcoming schedule. So yeah, join us Sunday for the Star Wars Patreon episode. That'll be the last one. We're calling that last breakdown episode of A New Hope. What was it? A New Hope. As a matter of fact, that's the final episode breakdown.
It's very on the nose. Yes.
Yeah, on the nose. I mean, it's Luke and he is a New Hope. So, but that's been a ton of fun. Can't wait to talk about that on Sunday. So join us for that. Okay, let's get into some really quick. I know you've already shared some opening thoughts. Let me start on just some very, very light things, and then we'll kind of get into the breakdown of it all. But I think and One Up versus CPU, who is in the he's in here tonight. Where's his comment? I just saw it. He said it really feels like a continuation of the main Star Wars run. I think he's referring to the comics. I would take that one further. Like this one, it does feel like it. I mean, not in the cinematic way, but it does pick up after, of course, Return of the Jedi, and so it is kind of nice. Even though, like, I may not be crazy about where issues 4 went and how it was played out. It is really kind of cool to see more stories being told in this era of Star Wars, because it has been a black hole of sorts. And so from that perspective, there is something still very enjoyable about this comic and being reintroduced to some characters that were canon light, I guess, maybe at one point. And now they're very, very much, baptism by fire in regards to like just being out there with the main players of like Luke and Leia and well, it's just those two really. So it's the main players so far. But it is kind of nice to have these. Oh, and we should also mention Mom Mothma. She plays a big role. She's introduced in this issue that we're going to talk about here in just a second. But again, it is kind of cool to see that we're seeing a lot of the stories that are kind of happening during this time frame. I think the artwork has been pretty good. I've got some issues with some of the later panels in like issues 3 and 4, but for the most part, it's done a pretty good, workable job of getting a lot of the visuals that we've already come to expect either from Star Wars comics or just comics in general. So again, I guess what I'm saying is, if this is this era of Star Wars is a particular interest and you were hooked on the first issue, the second issue, I think definitely delivers. And I think you're probably going to want to stick it out even for the third and fourth issues later down the road. But those are my initial thoughts kind of on this issue and maybe a little bit context for future. But what about you? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think with some of the story elements, some are more interesting than others, right? I think with Adelhard, I'm struggling a little bit to really connect and understand where he fits with the story. It's really cool to see some of the tie-ins though, with like Battlefront 2, Operation Cinder, things like that are coming into play that we'll talk through. But how is he relating to some of that? And the story elements are a bit shallow right now, like as of issue 2. So that's some are really cool, some are a little ho hum. It's really cool to see some characters come back that we'll talk to tonight too as well. It's kind of neat. We haven't seen in a while. I think the writing, you mentioned the art a little bit, which has been a little hit and miss for me too. Like some of how Luke Skywalker is drawn is a little bit odd sometimes. The writing during a particular scene on the scene on Pelio, I thought was actually rather kind of weak, unfortunately. And kind of a missed opportunity, I think. So that's an area that I was a little disappointed. I thought we could have just done more with that. But it was also really cool getting reintroduced to the Spice Runners of Kajimi and a little bit of history and the tie-ins there with what we saw in the sequel trilogy. And of course, the design of the Bliss family is just so cool. And it's just loaded with lore. You could just tell, but they don't give you that whole story. So that was kind of neat too. So we'll walk through some of that tonight. But a lot of promise in these story elements, and it's just a matter of whether they're going to pay off or not. And as we kind of know in later issues, some kind of fizzle, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right, well, let's pick up where we left off. It starts off here on the planet of Deveron. We talked about Yuppie Tashu in the last issue. He's the leader. I guess at this point, the leader of the Acolytes of the Beyond. He was in Return of the Jedi. He's been a character in Legends and canon that's gone on to do some really horrible things in all the best ways possible as the leader of the Acolytes of the Beyond. But he says he's going to, he predicts, I guess, that Luke is going to be heading to Pelio, which, like you mentioned earlier, ties into the Battlefront 2. In fact, you get to play as Luke Skywalker and go to this bunker that Palpatine has where he's got all these different Jedi artifacts, Sith artifacts, relics, and all kinds of other stuff that he's just been, bunkering and archiving for God knows how long. But he does mention that there's an ancient relic there in that observatory. And he tells Reyna Ascure that they're going to go get it. Like, they're going to retrieve it. They need it for something. It's not clear why. And this is where, I'll just kind of break it right now. So far, even in, what's that?
Yeah, go for it. Do it.
Well, it's just like, it just kind of drops, right? And that's the part that I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, there's a tie-in. We're going to learn more about the compass. And we don't. So it really just feels like it's an Easter egg or a nice way to kind of weave in some of the other stories that we've already gotten. But I was kind of hoping this would set up something more. It unfortunately doesn't, not a huge deal breaker as far as I'm concerned, but it was kind of, I got really excited when I saw the compass. Because if you played that game, it's significant. It means a lot of things, right? At least from the story perspective there. But he dispatches her to go out there, try to intercept him on Pelio and take back the Sith artifact, right? We cut over to the Super Star Destroyer Ravager, and we learned that Operation Cinder is well underway at this point. We all kind of knew this. We get to see the Sentinel droids, which for anybody that's not familiar, these are those droids with the heads of like Palpatine. They're basically delivering all the messages and the commands that Palpatine had pre-recorded and pre-set up for Operation Cinder, which, again, just a quick recap, that was him saying, look, if I ever die, it is a failure on the part of my empire, and so therefore it needs to be destroyed, right? I know it sounds kind of crazy, but, it's Palps. What do you get? What do you expect? Right. But these droids are basically, we get to see them kind of issuing orders and commands for Operation Cinder. and we're reintroduced to now Grand Admiral Sloan, who is basically providing an update saying that, they've already started the bombarding on Burnin Khan, which is a callback to the Mando episode. Some of this also plays out in Battlefront 2. You get to see Operation Cinder fully underway, and you get to be a part of it as the Empire is bombing you at one point. I think it might have been on Burnin Khan. No, I forget now. Maybe not, but one of the planets. But Candovant, Abonito, and then Cominor are like 4 of the other planets, I guess, that have already started getting bombarded and destroyed as part of Operation Cinder. And then she's talking to somebody else, and I want to get your thoughts on this. She's talking to a figure who looks to be an admiral of some sort. Now, the first panel they showed this on, I thought, oh my gosh, this is like Grand Admiral Thrawn, because he looks they all kind of have that same similar outfit. But then the next panel, it's definitely not. This character is not a Chiss by any means. They look almost human. Dark hair, but they intentionally keep this character in shadow. And I'll say this too, in issue 3 and a little bit on, it doesn't play out. So I imagine this is going to be one of these villains that will get a big reveal at some point. Maybe it's somebody we know, maybe it's a new character, but I do find it odd that they would keep them in shadow for that long if it's not somebody we already knew. So any thoughts on who this mysterious figure that Sloane's talking to? And I'll just kind of, the last piece on this is that Yuppie Tashu says that that he mentions to Sloane that Yuppie Tashu is already on going after Luke Skywalker. So they're in on the know, right? They know what the Acolytes of the Beyond are working towards. I have a feeling they probably know what's going on. Well, they do. They have a feeling they know what's going on in the Anowat sector with Adelhard. But any ideas or thoughts, theories around who this particular figure is and why they're keeping him so secret right now?
No, I mean, it's a darker skinned character as well. And so it's, and they're in the Admiral Whites with the red cape around him as well. And so
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not really sure. I mean, very shrouded in secrecy here. And I think this is where with comics, you have to usually let these things play out. They usually come back around at some point, although not always right away. But it's clear there's a lot of machinations going on with the Empire, though, right? What the Emperor has set in motion in this post, worst case scenario, situation is they're having to carry this forward, and there's a lot of connected tissue with all of that, with the Acolytes of the Beyond and everybody else. But how this guy plays into it, and then Adelhard kind of going off a bit rogue in that element. The story is a little jumbled here for me, a little bit about like what's going on and who actually has the reins on the Empire right now, and who's actually trying to get the reins on it. And I guess that's kind of the point, is that they're trying to feel their way through this kind of transition period here. But
right,
what is this person, and how did he promote Grand Admiral Sloane? Because they talk about this as a new title. It sounds good on her.
Mm-hmm.
She's standing perfectly straight and accepting all of this too. So it's great to see Sloane kind of back on the page here. But I'm not really sure. But yeah, it does look like a very short, dark hair, kind of cropped look, and darker skin human, absolutely. But I really don't know who this would be right now.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind this is this first part is 4 issues of a 12-issue run. So some of these characters may come back, and they don't. I'll just be right. I'll tell you right now, he doesn't come back in this series, at least these first 4 issues. So this person will probably crop up here in the second or third trilogy, if you will.
Yeah, with comics you have to be a bit patient, because they tend to be slow burns, and then they end up coming back around and referencing things from 8 issues ago that you have to go try to remember. So
right, yeah,
kind of par for the course in that one.
Yep. Okay, we go to the Anowat sector, and I think we're on a planet called Darylin Boda. I've never heard of this place. By the way, Dan the Man said, the post-Return of the Jedi era has been begging for stories. I could not disagree any further or more than that as well.
You mean agree?
Oh, yeah. I couldn't agree more. Sorry.
There you go.
Not disagree. You're absolutely right, Dan the Man. But we're in the Anowat sector, and Adelhard has basically captured a rebel party that was there. He orders Lieutenant Alatia, or I don't remember what we landed on as far as the name goes on her.
That works. Yep.
To interrogate the rest of the pilots that they've been captured. He ends up killing one of the pilots, kind of brutally, as a matter of fact, right? And we got to keep in mind, in the Anowat sector, right? Adelhard has decided that he's not going to tell his people, and he's not going to let anybody know in this sector that Palpatine and Vader have died. And so he's wanting to kind of sustain and keep the momentum going, if you will, that came from his predecessors, the people that he grew up with, the people that mentored him and molded him, which were Tarkin and Palpatine and Vader and Thrawn, right? he calls them out as all of his kind of mentors. He served under every single one of them in some capacity. But he is very much trying to put a squelch to any rebellion efforts in the sector. And so, yeah, he goes to the extreme of killing one of them, and then tells them they're going to go ahead and keep the rest of the pilots and interrogate them for more information. So
he's basically trying to break their spirit. You know, he keeps saying, like, does it look like you've won? Because the rebel pilots are saying, like, we've won. Why do you keep fighting? Right. And I think this is the thing we talked a little bit about last time we covered it, when we covered issue 1, is that the rebellion just kind of thought everybody would be done. Right?
Yeah, like they throw up their arms and stand down.
Yeah, it's over. You're knocked down. Stay down. New eras is ushering in, and that's not how war works. And we're about to get kind of a monologue here in a second that kind of walks us through some of that. But I think what Adelhard is doing is saying, does it look like the war is over? Does it look like you are in control? Does it look like you've ascended to power? No. And this person who talks back gets shot point blank. And I don't think he really wanted to keep prisoners anyway for the rest of them, but you know, his subordinates, I don't know if they convinced him. He's like, well, whatever, just do whatever you want. Yeah. This guy's kind of a madman, to be honest with you. Like, he's just not, I don't know. There's a lot of strategy, I'm sure, with what he's doing, but when you just look at his actions, he just looks like he's just a cowboy just out there, you know, pulling the guns out and shooting, you know?
Yeah. He pretty much is. He is kind of a loose cannon. He's a little bit wild, a bit crazy, for lack of a better or longer term. But and more on that later, because the way this series, at least these first four issues end, sets up kind of a nice little character development for him. Ed's with us. I don't know. Hey, Ed, welcome to the show. He's only been here like once ever, I think, in like 5-6 years. So we may not see him again until, at this point, 2030. So thanks, Ed, for being here. Really appreciate that. Okay. We then we get introduced to, well, I shouldn't say introduced, but we get caught up with Mothma and Leia and a new character named Agent Barons. I forget what his name is. An old dude. Yeah. But, you know, and they're kind of talking back and forth, right? Mothma's talking to Leia. They're worried about, you know, they've got basically two factions of the Empire that are still active out there, and they don't seem they're kind of picking up that these guys really aren't necessarily working together. And so that's part of it, right? I mean, they're getting now that the sense that the Empire, not only are they not standing down, but they're now splintered and they're working independently of one another, vying for their own kind of power and that sort of thing. And they do understand that there's basically Operation Cinder. They're well aware of that's underway and what that means, at least conceptually. And they are aware that Adelhard is the one that's out in the Anowat sector, kind of, you know, trying to keep everybody contained and long live the empires type stuff. They also mentioned that they're getting intel from a source. So we've got a mole essentially on Adelhard's team. That one wasn't a big surprise because they only introduced you to like 4 characters on Adelhard's team. So you got one of 4 people to pick from unless they were going to introduce somebody new. So I won't spoil it just yet because it doesn't get revealed until a little bit later. But it is interesting that they've got somebody on the inside there in Adelhard's team, which is kind of a game changer a little bit later. And then they mentioned that, look, we need to get in there. We need to understand more about what his intentions are. What is he doing? And so they decide they're going to put together a super tight task force to go in, assess the situation, try to help where they can, and then engage Adelhard if they have to, because he's basically set up what they're deeming now that iron blockade, right? They're creating that blockade from anything coming in or out of the Anowat sector.
Yeah, an interesting part of this conversation with Mon Mothma and Leia and company is that you start to feel like the New Republic is already struggling with, like, this really complicates things, right? It's not just everybody's defeated, setting up a government. Yeah, you may have to tidy up some loose ends, but now we've got potentially fractured factions within the Empire. And both of those things are going to be very problematic, right? And they've not even talked about crime syndicates or anything else, right? So I think these are the issues that the New Republic is starting. You started to feel this weight, I think, on Leia in particular, and maybe a bit on Mon Mothma as well. But we spend a little more time with Leia and some of her inner thoughts that you can start to feel like this is really weighing on her. Of like, man, this is going to be really, like, we've done a lot and it's been really hard up to this point. Mm-hmm. But this is going to be even more challenging because we can't predict what's going on. And now we've got people acting out of, like, kind of in character, but also out of character and a bit unpredictable as to how we should be able to respond, especially as trying to imbue confidence in a galaxy that you're a different governing body than what came before, and that people can have faith and trust and confidence in you that you're going to be able to provide something better than what they had under the Empire, which, yeah, while it was really oppressive, people kind of knew what to expect too.
Right. Yep. Oh, good. Oh, great points. Even things I hadn't even considered, honestly, because they don't really have a lot of panels here. So that you were able to extrapolate that is impressive. You've done this before, I can tell.
Yeah, I read a lot of comics.
Yeah, you read a lot of comics. Okay. All right. And so the team that they've assembled now was what got me really excited, honestly.
Yeah, this was kind of cool just to be able to see the face. As soon as you saw one of the faces in particular, like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Why don't you take it away? Why don't you give us reveal the names of the four, was it 4 people, 5 people that they put together? 4.
Yeah, we got a 4-person strike team here. So we've got, oh gosh, sorry, I got to get to the notes you come out right. So we have Kes Dameron. Dameron, right? So, and I'll give you they have a little bubble, kind of what each one brings to the table. So for Kes Dameron, of course, this is Poe Dameron's father, right?
Yeah.
Pathfinders are unstoppable, and Dameron is one of the best. I believe this is Leia saying who the Strike Force team would be.
Right.
Then we have Ren Zenit, who we met in issue 1. No one knows what lies past the Iron Blockade better than she does. She survived it. And then we have probably the one that you got the most excited about was Jarek Yeager.
Yes.
From, of course, Resistance, Star Wars Resistance, the cartoon there. He does it all and does it well. I was actually really disappointed we had such a very basic description for Yeager. It's very accurate, but it's also like, wait, hold on. No, this is Jarek flipping Yeager, man. Like, give us more than that. So, a little disappointing.
I think they were trying to go for a craftier way, a more creative way of saying, jack of all trades. And so they said he does everything well kind of thing. But yeah, and what got me really excited, on top of the fact that he's in this comic, I was really starting to think like, oh man, are we going to see Bucket, right? His droid, which is another standout character from Resistance. And so far we've not seen him, but if he doesn't already have Bucket, it would be kind of cool to maybe this is the origin story of how him and Bucket come together and he takes him on as his droid.
Yeah, maybe so. And again, we know we've got like 20 plus years before we get to Star Wars Resistance. So a lot of time passes here. And then the 4th member of our team is Theresa Allern, who is a trusted intelligence operative, someone who isn't scared to get her hands dirty, which is kind of interesting because there were some read between the line moments of where Leia was going of like, we might have to do things that are more, I don't know,
Andor style.
Yeah, a little more Cassian Andor type of thing going on, right? So that was the vibe I got. She didn't say that, but that it definitely felt like they were going that route. And then when you get this comment here, not scared to get their hands dirty, it kind of feels like you hired an assassin, right? So, or at least someone who's was willing to flex some of those rules a little bit. So you have to figure out how comfortable you are with some of that.
Yep. And I think as the comic goes on, it would be good for us to kind of circle back to these descriptions and see if we if we can cite examples of the characters and the things that they do. It's kind of light right now. I'll be honest.
Let's say in this issue, it's not going to happen.
Not in this issue, because it ends and this is really it. Like I got so much flack on social media for even mentioning Jarek Yeager's name, but this is it. They don't say anything else. Nothing else really happens. Well, at the very end it does, but
at the very end,
you get no context of really what are they going to do or any of that stuff. So, but yeah, it would be fun to kind of circle back and just say, look, are they kind of living up to these descriptions that they gave us earlier on in issue 2? Okay, so let's move on from that. We go to Endor, and this is kind of Luke wrapping up things, right? We talked already about Ren Zenit. She's that pilot that came to Endor. She crashed there. She was one of the survivors from that kind of skirmish at the very beginning in the Anoat system. And basically, he kind of goes to this whole thing about trying to, give her hope and try to inspire hope in her. Tells her that, look, the Force is calling me somewhere. I need to go. This is Pelio. Of course, we just talked about it. But he feels a pull of the Force, and he tells her he needs to go. But he tells her that, look, if they give up hope, everything that they've fought for will be in vain. And it's typical kind of, I don't know, stuff that you've already read and seen in other medias. But it is kind of nice that it is Luke Skywalker delivering this message to someone who's really just at the ground level, literally, right, fighting. He's trying to inspire everybody there. It's kind of a grassroots effort. But he says that, he's looking for answers. So he's about to leave on his way. I think the ships take off. And we have a kind of moment there where it says, perhaps the questions that haunt Luke about himself. Now, this is kind of like the narrator or the narration, I guess, of the context bubbles that no one's speaking, but it just says, perhaps the questions that haunt Luke about himself, about the Jedi, about his father, aren't the problem, but the answer. And at that point, he looks over at his hand. So kind of calling back to the legacy of Darth Vader. And so when I saw that and read that, I was thinking, oh, wow, we're really going to get into the Darth Vader of it all and the Anakin Skywalker of it all in this comic. And that would be super exciting because, what does that mean? Does that mean he's going to commune with him at some point in the Force. And I mean, I had all kinds of theories of where this went. And unfortunately, it doesn't pay off. It doesn't really kind of go anywhere just yet. But again, I want to say there are 6 issues left, even after the first 4 have wrapped up. So it could, or 8 issues, I guess. It could still come about, but it does sound like they're hopefully going to be more of a dig into that relationship and the legacy, the Skywalker legacy itself in the series.
Yeah, and with issue 1, they teased the helmet, of course, and they had moments with Leia with the helmet of Vader's helmet.
Yeah.
So you'd like to think that, and they've got so many story arcs going on already that you're going to need all 12 issues to be able to spend any kind of normal, like any amount of time with these characters to let each of these little pockets to be able to develop and actually get something meaty from it. And if these first 4 issues go relatively quickly, so I'm hoping that we continue to pull more from that, and we're not just going to kind of start skipping through, because as you're kind of seeing with this issue, we've already jumped through 3 or 4 different, really just 1 or 2 page type of scenarios where they just jump between the characters. And this more or less continues for the rest of the issue. I think we only have one stretch where we've got maybe 3 or 4 pages for one particular story arc, but it keeps flipping through. And it's not always just the 3 for Star Wars. It's kind of like 4.5 sometimes too. So there's a kind of a lot going on to establish it. Again, only issue 2, but those are the things we have to kind of keep in mind and be able to come back and revisit and probably pull back from these as we get to further parts of the series.
Mm-hmm.
But an interesting conversation here with Luke and Ren of, again, trying to inspire her, give a little bit of hope, but also I think keep some perspective too, right? That she's feeling a little distraught at, we just feel like we just won this war, but the reality is we haven't won this war, right? You could kind of hear this has been repeated a few times already in between issues 1 and 2. But Luke is also like, well, we have to keep thinking about what we're fighting for, right? And what is it that we need to continue doing, right? And just continue to inspire her in that way. And she seems to, be okay with that. And I'm not really sure what Luke is referencing here with what you were just talking about, right? But it'll be interesting, like he's staring at his hand about what is this legacy that he's wanting to chase, I guess.
Yeah. All right, we go to Tatooine for kind of a weird panel. Like again, it's another thread.
This was actually my favorite part of the issue.
Well, and I don't mean weird. And I don't. So I didn't mean weird as in a bad way. If that makes it, if that's possible, unexpected. There you go. Thank you. Is probably what I was thinking. I was like, wow, this came out of nowhere. But we go to Tatooine because, of course, we go to Tatooine, and we catch up with Bib Fortuna, which is awesome because I think there's a lot of questions that canonically we want answered as far as what happened in that transfer or lack of transfer of power, or however that went down with Jabba dying. But we're immediately brought into Jabba's palace. Bib Fortuna's there, and we get introduced to Ziva Bliss, which is Zori's mother, which is kind of cool. There's also, and I'm going to screw all these names up, Vigilich. There's a character named Tommaso. And I think there was one other one that maybe I didn't write the name down. I think there was one more. There are 4. I don't think I have the name on here, so apologies for that. But basically, they've got these 4 spice runners, with Ziva Bliss is kind of leading the way there. We also learned that Bib Fortuna at some point helped Ziva kill her mother, like take down her mother, which was Zera. So this is the grandmother now.
We don't know if it was kill, but definitely
took her down or overtook her. I read it as kill because I'm crazy like that. But this would be Zori's grandmother. So it's kind of weird that they would have this kind of relationship. I guess it's not very peaceful. I mean, they're spice runners, but I don't know. I guess they don't like each other, but we get that context. And I couldn't remember if that had ever been discussed or anywhere else. It felt new, but thinking about it now too, I don't know if maybe it came up in another story somewhere down the road, but I don't know. Were you aware of, I guess, any of this happening?
I don't remember any of this happening now.
Okay.
But I like that we, like you said, we're getting this underworld angle though, and I think this is really important back from what we learned in Book of Boba Fett. So, how this content all kind of ties together. We told you there were lots of tie-ins, and we're not even to all of them yet. So, but yeah, this is really cool because Bib Fortuna is like, Ziva comes to him talking about, there's this disturbance going on with the Empire. There's this Adelhard guy. We want to back him. You should back him with us. And Bib Fortuna doesn't like being told what to do. He's on a bit of a power trip, right? And not surprising with Bib's history and what we've known of him, since then, and what Boba Fett wanted to do with him. So, he's not really paying any attention to this. And Ziva just wanted to give him a chance. It was a little bit interesting or a little odd here, where she just kind of gives him the opportunity to respond, but then she just bails and doesn't really give him a legit, like, get over yourself moment and then come to an agreement and try to compromise on something. to figure it out, because again, she wants to side with the Empire, because again, they want to foment chaos, right? They want to continue to make sure the galaxy is unstable as this new republic comes in, because of law and order and authority being interjected in the galaxy, and the Outer Rim won't be beyond the new republic's purview, right?
Mhm.
The Empire may have been allowed to just kind of foment and be able to do what they want. The new republic will be less tolerant of some of that stuff. So it's in their best interest to continue to be able to keep everything unstable, because that's when you reap the most profits. So that's where Ziva Bliss is at least saying in her dialogue to Bib Fortuna. But I think Bib feels like he's got this empire now. He's inherited this empire from Jabba, and there's no reason for him to be able to do any of that. At least that's the kind of the impressions that we're given here. He's very condescending to Ziva as well. And like you said, like, after everything I've done, you want to come in here and, disrespect me effectively.
Yeah. And I think they're setting up something more here. Because I said it did feel like it was kind of out of place. It was unsuspecting. And even what we get later on with Ziva in where the Spice Runner storyline goes isn't really there's not really a relationship so far to Bib Fortuna. So I imagine that, again, that's going to crop up in, later down the road in one of the other 2 arcs that's coming up here.
Yeah, but love the design of Ziva Bliss. Is very consistent with Zori. Same helmet, right? Mm-hmm. But she's wearing more of a blue kind of a body forming outfit, and this really cool, like, fluffy, almost like Dalmatian patterned wool cape or fur, cape or something like that, a cloak. So she looks like a total badass. She's pretty awesome.
Yeah, you can see, if you're watching the live stream, you can see her just above our heads there in the background on the artwork that Jonesy created for the show. Alex just asked, that's right, but did they say how? Did they say how Bib Fortuna survived? And no, they did not. But I mean, honestly, even like, this is where he's going. Wasn't he on the barge? There are so many characters and legends that were on that barge that lived. It was amazing. Like, I know that thing exploded, but it felt like everybody bailed at the last minute. And so it sounds like, they may be keeping some of that going here. But no. Okay, so that was short moment, cool moment. Something that's probably, again, building, for other storylines down the road. And so we go finally to Pelio and Luke's attack. So he's already got the compass. We get to see him holding the compass. That's a scene, like, again, right out of, Battlefront 2 storyline, the single player storyline. And when he walks out, I should say also the compass was calling to him. I think we mentioned that earlier, but he felt a very strong pull to it, and it was kind of calling to him. Again, that's similar to what we got in the video game. But as he comes out, he's suddenly attacked by the Acolytes of the Beyond. And the Acolytes of the Beyond are led by a character named Yuan Hauzel. And Yuan Hauzel is not Mara Jade. Okay, I'm getting in my ear now. So the visual cues are coming in from Jonesy, not Mara Jade. Okay, wait, time out though. She's a red-headed character who's part of the dark side, served the Emperor, and she's got a name. She's named, and she's got a feud with Luke Skywalker. Okay, not in the same way as Mara Jade.
Just have a feud with Luke Skywalker.
I'm really grasping here. But I got to admit, like, why would they do this? Are they just trolling us at this point? Why would they put a redheaded character in here that's got some of the similarities? And yeah, I'm joking about her being really, it's very light, and you got to really stretch to get there. But it is kind of crazy. Look at Stephanie coming in. Did somebody say Mara Jade? No, I think her name is Mara Jade, the way it's spelled right there underneath my name. So it's not the same. No. So anyways, what are your thoughts on this? There's a battle, and we'll get into all that. But
yeah, so much to unpack of, like, all the therapy I'm going to need now. But no. Well, the hair is very different. She's not an Emperor's hand, right? So what we know of Mara Jade, of course, from Legends, completely different. The only connections are that she fights with Luke. She has terrible dialogue. I'm sorry. Like, the writing here is not great. Apologies, Alex Segura. Don't mean any disrespect. It's just not really great here. And then, like, and again, it's just really forced, I think, throughout this thing. I think that some of the cool things here, though, are about, like, this Pelio, like the star compass that Luke has, is that we have like 4 or 5 tie-ins, like literally within just like 2 or 3 panels, if you think about all this stuff. So, like you said, so if you're not familiar with it, the star compass is basically like a wayfinder. It's like a Jedi version of a wayfinder that helps point you to various, or Luke ends up using it later on with Lor Santeca. So here's kind of connection 1, to find out these, or to find these long lost Jedi temples, right? We learned all of that in Shadow of the Sith. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like play 1. Of course, we have the Battlefront 2, like you had mentioned, because it's straight out of the video game. They kind of shoehorned a little bit of your redhead, not Mara Jade person, because like consider it a gift, Luke. It's not going to matter. Like this is the part I have a problem with it. Basically, they're fighting for this compass. They want this compass, the acolytes of the beyond, and Luke is just disposing of them easily, right? He's got his lightsaber
it's
out.
not
He's
even a fight.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, and he's like, "No, you can't have it." And they basically like, it's like Skeletor, like giving up until next time. I mean, it's kind of what it felt like. She's like, just consider it a gift. All right, so the gift is actually an Easter egg as well. So the gift is actually from Legend of Luke Skywalker book, because there's a story that this character Ulina tells that it's again, this is a tale kind of thing, but that it was a gift to Luke on the planet of Pelio or whatever. Well, this is not really a gift.
It's not really a gift, but I guess you could see it as that or interpret that as that.
Right, yeah. And then, of course, the last Easter egg, of course, is the compass is eventually used by Luke to find Octo.
Yeah.
And that's from the visual dictionary for Rise of Skywalker, of course.
Yes,
So this one little sequence here has so many tie-ins. But yeah, so basically they're fighting over this thing. They ambush him, right? This is what Yuppie Tashi's been trying to set up. He's been saying Luke can't resist it. It's an artifact. He's going to be drawn to it. The Force is calling him. And then we have this kind of crummy, like lackluster fight. And Luke's just like, no, you can't have it. And they're like, okay, peace, we're outie. And Skeletor on the way out and considering a gift. And Luke's just like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like, I don't really understand it. The art is a little inconsistent here too. If I'm just
it's kind of hard to make out like some of the battle sequences, and that's probably consistent even in the third and fourth issue.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, some of that is,
Luke
and I'm not.
Luke looks like Mario jumping, like with his lightsaber out from Mario Brothers. It's kind of as much as we've always wanted Luke, dark, black costume Luke, green lightsaber, full powers and all that kind of stuff. And we finally kind of get him on the page, and it just kind of fell a little flat.
Well, spoiler alert. I know I said we wouldn't do spoilers, but don't just hang in there. You'll get more of it later on.
But
you'll get more of it later on.
And then we have really short, weird hair Mara Jade, not Mara Jade.
Yeah. So Mara Jade's stunt double, but
she has no lightsaber, by the way. She just has a knife.
No. Right.
We don't even really know if she's actually a Force user, because she also has a gun.
Yeah, she's got a gun as well. It's a blaster. And at one point she says, we serve the Sith, Skywalker, we serve Vader and Palpatine. We are but shadows that flow beneath them, and we await their return. And that's, I mean, I don't know. That's part of the dialogue that I think you may have been talking about. It's kind of corny. It sounds kind of corny, but at least from the rate, or for anybody that doesn't know what the Acolytes of the Beyond stand for and what their purpose is, and that kind of summarizes it for, very quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, and I'm not an apologist for what happens in this sequence, but I will say that it was very clear to them very fast that they were way outnumbered going up against Luke Skywalker. I think there was her. I know if you got the comic in front of you, I can't remember. There's probably like 8 or 9 of these guys that were sent with her.
There's at least 6, and there's some weird shadows. So there may have been like upwards of 10 total.
Right.
Yeah. But at least I have a dozen.
And they get dispatched like immediately with zero effort on Luke's part, which you would expect from Luke Skywalker, right? At this point. And then the way he takes her out, I mean, he basically force pushes her and just, she falls over and loses her blaster and her shoes fall off. And no, I'm just kidding. I don't know. But he dispatches her pretty quickly. So I think at that point they were like, okay, I don't know why we were sent here as well. Maybe that's what we were thinking as a reader, but it's clearly they're overmatched. And so they don't even try to push, and they're just kind of like, they run away and, with their tail between their legs, and just warn Luke Skywalker that, okay, yeah, you may have the compass, but it's not going to stop the dark side from returning. Now, whether that's alluding to something happening in this series or something, further with Snoke or eventually with Palpatine returning, it could be all of those things, but she does kind of leave that little parting message with Luke Skywalker before she bails.
But they had made the compass seem like it was so important to Acolytes of the Beyond, and they really just kind of abandoned it. And we don't really learn the importance of it, or why is it important for them, and kind of speculating what is it that, this is kind of what I thought would be an interesting discussion for us, is what do the Acolytes of the Beyond, what does the Sith want to do with this compass? Do we have any ideas about what they might actually be looking for, that they think the compass, is it just other Jedi temples? Is it maybe, I don't know if it could be used to find Sith temples, but I'm guessing maybe ancient Jedi texts, or maybe is there some link to, no, I'm actually being quite serious, right?
Okay.
Because it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, we know that Palpatine was a collector of all artifacts.
Right.
you know,
Right.
for his research, like knowledge is power, right? But could it also be somewhat tied into maybe what he wanted to do at Exegol, and they need some of these pointers to be able to get them to where they want to be?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And again, to be fair, we still don't know where the series goes. Like Alex Segura could be just planting all these seeds. It could be like I hate to use the Acolyte as an example, but there are a lot of things that are being thrown at us in these first two issues that don't feel like they get a payoff in even issues 3 and 4. And so my hope is that they will come back around again in the second arc or the third arc before the series is over. So all great points. But yeah, so let's move on from Mara Jade, and we get into the kind of the final. By the way, I want to come back to the comments. Only Peter's Girl said, "Long live Max Rebo." He's one of the characters that lived in after the sail barge, believe it or not, coincidentally. And One Up versus CPU said she should have said somehow. Not sure what that was in reference to. She should have said somehow. Somehow she was. I don't know. Clear that up. We'll come back to that in a second here. Okay. Let's get into what it was labeled as the fringe of the Anoet sector. So we're in the outskirts of that. And this is where the team that was assembled, right? They finally come into the Anoet sector out on the fringes of that. And that they kind of mentioned they're kind of talking about the mission. They are not in a like weaponized ship. It's not a starship. It's basically a cargo ship. And they have really no weapons on the ship whatsoever. And they're kind of having a small debate about whether or not that was the right decision. And I forget who it says, but someone says, look, this is like the perfect kind of ship to be in, because we don't want to take them off and tip anybody off if suddenly we're surprised or caught. And surprise, they're caught. The Kajimi forces show up. So Zori, or not Zori. Oh crap. What was her name?
Ziva.
Ziva. There's two, and then her mom, Zara. So Ziva shows up with the Kajimi forces, and they come out of Lightspeed, I guess. I don't really explain it. You don't really see it, but suddenly they're surrounded by all these ships. And so it's already gone south really fast. And unfortunately for them, the comic just really kind of ends there, right? It ends with suddenly the ships are surrounded. They kind of, the Spice Runners hail them, basically tell them that they've been surrounded and to kind of give up. And that's kind of where it ends. So, they were kind of setting this really ragtag group of the best, if you will, to kind of go in and just start whooping butt. And that kind of, subverts expectations in some ways, which does play out in issues 3 and 4. They do kind of make up for it at that point. But any thoughts on the final piece here, and maybe any final thoughts as we wrap up?
Yeah, at least with the Luke scene, there was a little bit of action, and it was building, and you had something, right, that put some energy into the issue besides Viv Fortuna and Ziva Bliss and their kind of conversation. So I was hoping we'd end a little bit more in that same vein here, where we'd actually be able to see the strike team get a little bit of action, at least see why they're so special for this mission. But it just ends up kind of being a setup for like, no, we're going to be captured and end scene kind of thing. Actually, we could probably learn a few things from how they ended this comic book and apply to how we've been doing A New Hope, because they seem to have no problem with just cutting off a scene right when they introduce everything. So
it's over. Good night, everybody.
Yep. To be continued next issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it kind of ends abruptly. And of course, issue 3 resolves it pretty quickly as well. But, it just kind of fizzles a little bit there at the end. So again, there's a lot of things going on in this issue of setting things up, kind of moving a little bit forward in some areas, giving you a tiny bit more flavor, but I don't know if we really learn a lot more about some of the characters, except for maybe Ziva Bliss and the Bib Fortuna, really more of a cameo at this point, and that they're going to work into this process. So if you liked the Crimson Reign series and Crimson Dawn series that we had back in between Star Wars A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, I think that's right. Yes.
Yeah.
No, between Empire and Return of the Jedi, sorry.
Yeah.
This has some of those elements kind of coming back in. So if that was your speed in those comics and that story, then this might be up your alley too. But a lot of stories here, and it's moving really quick. They don't spend more than just 2 or 3 pages on any particular story before they move to the next one, and then they kind of jump back to the next one. So it's kind of a little bit of whiplash going on right now. So we'll have to see next couple of issues. How does this smooth out? Does it keep this pace up, or what was it do?
Yep.
Spoiler, it keeps up this kind of pace, but
yeah. So
we complain about pace a lot, and then when we kind of get it, it's like, wow, that was a little too fast. Can we pump the brakes just a little bit?
Right. Never
We're
happy.
Well, right, but we're used to. If think about this, someone had mentioned in the chat, kind of a continuation of the Star Wars flagship. What the Star Wars flagship has been doing is it draws things out really.
Yeah, it's almost
really
it's the
long
extreme of it
sometimes.
all, right?
Yeah, you got 50 issues to cover a year, right? It seems like a lot, to be able to tell these stories, and then it's like the polar opposite here. So it's a finding that consistency and that derivation between them is a little bit challenging right now.
Yeah. One up came back and said she should have said somehow the dark side will return. So
there you go.
And the panel, so she kind of does. She says, your compass will be of little use to you. That's the Skeletor reference that you're talking, because she's running away like she's got her back almost turned.
Until next time, He-Man.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, she says, your compass will be of little use to you when the dark side overtakes us all, herself included. So that's the exact quote. That's what she warns him of. Again, it could be alluding to something within this series, which I think is probably the case, but larger picture, we know Snoke is going to be coming into this eventually, along with Palpatine returning somehow.
And it'll get your little dog too.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Rob came in and said, hey, if it's helpful, Mark Thompson treats the E as silent in Yuppei's name while narrating the novel. So it's just Yup.
All right.
Yup.
That works.
Okay.
That makes sense because I didn't actually listen to that book. I just read it.
Yeah. All right.
Yes,
we'll go with you.
It's crazy.
I've always, for years, I've always called him Yuppie, but that's because the Hispanic in me looks at it and goes, oh, that's Lupe with the Y. So,
right.
Or the Texan to me.
Yeah. Thanks, Rob. At least we have Mark Thompson to lean on, right? He usually doesn't lead us astray.
Yeah.
Usually.
Marcion. Nah, he's fine.
That wasn't his fault, though.
I know it wasn't his fault. That was the writers not knowing what the heck they were doing. But cool. Yeah, we'll, again, issues 3 and 4 are out, so we'll be picking up 3. I don't know, maybe we can get it done this weekend. If we get nothing else planned on Sunday, we can come back, hit issue 3, and then get right into issue 4 before, I think now the second series is November, is it 14th, I think? It's like it's only a week away, so they're moving real long, so we need to get caught up, because I don't want to get buried here too mumuch, especially with the Skeleton Crew coming out here soon.
I think these are coming out about every other week. So it would be that week or the week after. Because, like you said, issue 4 came out this week. So, yeah, they're going to move quick. Yeah, the holidays are going to be a busy one for us here.
Yep. All right. Speaking of busy, that's not a good segue. How about some shout outs for the folks that joined us on the live stream tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, if you're listening to this, thank you for the download. CantinaCast.com/YouTube. You can come out here and join the chat. You can give us amazing help like Rob did for us here and so many of the other great comments, like my Star Wars guys, JJ Skywalker, One versus CPU, Alex, Stephanie, Only Vader's Girl, Dan the Man, and Eduardo. If I missed anybody, my sincerest apologies, not intentional. For everyone in the background, we hope you'll come out and say hi next time. We appreciate you coming out and tuning into the stream. Please like the video if you liked this. If you want to see more of it, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about this comic series. If you've read it in particular, what do you think about issue 2? If you've read the subsequent issues, it's okay if you want to put a little spoilers in there. We're not sensitive to that kind of stuff. Go ahead and leave us in there about kind of where you feel the series is going. Is it picking up that Return of the Jedi theme and feels as we go through? We'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. Even if you don't like the video, like the comment, like it, please. Okay. Sunday again, we'll be back to do at least the Patreon show, and if we can't get a Waystation put together as far as news, then maybe we'll come back and do issue number 3. There you go. Issue number 3. All right, guys, that's it for tonight. We'll see y'all here very soon. As I try to find, let's just cut all this out because I don't know where the heck the button went to now.
You just hit end stream.
Yeah, is that it now? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see y'all next week.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff. But I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. Can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what. So that's your disclaimer.